Please welcome Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. It's good to be here. I just got here. McCarthy didn't speak as long as I thought he would. I had to rush up. They said, "Do you want makeup?" I said, "Gornish Telfin." Do you young people know what that means? Anyway, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me at the largest gathering of Americans who support the United States-Israel relationship. Thank you for coming and supporting Israel. Now, let me begin on a happy note. At least some Jews can play basketball. The Yeshiva University basketball team, they're known as the Maccabees. They won their conference and just qualified for the NCAAs. Now, I wasn't that good. I wasn't one of those Jews who could play basketball. I played at Madison High School. And our team's motto that year was, "We may be small, but we're slow." Anyway, I want to thank your great leadership, your new president. She's going to do a great job, Betsy Burns-Korn. Mort Friedman, the board chair, Howard Corr, Esther Kurtz, and my dear friend and fellow New Yorker, Bob Cohen, all of whom have dedicated themselves to strengthening the bond between the United States and Israel. And I want to recognize all your distinguished guests and all of the members of AIPAC, all of you who keep the organization so strong, especially my fellow New Yorkers. Raise your hands, New Yorkers. But I love all of you from all the other 49 states, too. Now, I want to thank you all for what you do to strengthen not just Israel, but the United States. And I am so proud. I've been told that there are many students here. Students, stand up. There are more than 4,000 students here supporting AIPAC. God bless every one of you. And you know, students, I have a grandson, Noah. He's 1 year old. He learned how to climb up the stairs, crawl up the stairs, and crawl down backwards. He's a genius. But when he's older, I hope he is like you, the students in the crowd today. Because you come here and do what you are doing, educating the world about the history of our people. As we all know, many of your peers do not know the long history, the struggles, the persecution of the Jewish people, and why it's so important to all of us to have a strong Israel and a strong American-Israel relationship. But you students, you will teach them, and one day, God willing, my grandson Noah will be joining you in doing the same thing. Now, tonight I wish to speak about the need to maintain strong support for Israel, a strong bipartisan relationship, and the threats to Jewish communities that we are facing around the globe. There's no question that the state of Israel has come a long way in the past 70 years, but threats to the land of Israel and to the Jewish people are growing, and unfortunately, have been for some time. The international community at the United Nations never misses an opportunity to single out Israel for condemnation. Hamas is still intent on kidnapping and killing Israeli citizens. An increasingly desperate Iran plots to undermine Israel in every way. Iranian proxies are operating in Lebanon and Iraq and Yemen and Syria. And the chaos in Syria and the Middle East sits on Israel's doorstep. A little over a week ago, rockets landed in the playground in Sderot. A playground, that's where they sent rockets. So my friends, the safety and the security of Israel must always be a priority, a high priority of the United States. And as long as I am leader in the Senate, support for Israel's security in the Senate will be non-negotiable. But we can only hope to defend Israel from these threats so long as we maintain a united front, Democrats and Republicans together. We all know that the winds of politics are changing. They blow fiercely during election years like this one. But no matter how fiercely the winds may blow, we must not let support for Israel be caught up in the maelstrom. The friendship between our two countries must be unshakable. The friendship between the bond between us must be unbreakable. Support for the friendship between our countries does not depend which party you belong to. Plain and simple. And no matter what, we must keep the U.S.-Israel relationship bipartisan. This has been a mission for me, and it must be for you and all the friends of Israel. So whenever I have led a piece of pro-Israel legislation, even when Democrats had the majority in the House or Senate, I always made sure I had a Republican equal co-sponsor, because the foundation of our relationship must remain bipartisan as it has been for decades. I am proud, very proud, that the overwhelming majority of Democrats support a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. We have and we always will. Now we know there are those who seek to use Israel as a way to score political points. They treat Israel as another talking point, another way to stoke resentment between the two parties in Washington. My friends, these voices do a disservice to both Israel and to the United States. Our politics may be more polarized than ever, but it's incumbent on all of us who care about the U.S.-Israel relationship to keep it bipartisan. The relationship between the U.S. and Israel transcends any single party, any single election, any single president. As you know well, the security assistance that AIPAC champions every year is passed by both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, because both parties believe that Israel must maintain a qualitative military edge to defend herself. Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow 3 missile defense systems, all of which defend Israel from attack, are funded by both Democrats and Republicans in Congress. The Taylor Force Act, which stops funding that directly benefits the Palestinian Authority until it ceases payments to imprisoned terrorists or their families, was passed by both Democrats and Republicans in Congress. I helped lead the way for that. A resolution opposing BDS and efforts to delegitimize Israel passed the democratically controlled House with 398 votes, the vast majority of Democrats and Republicans united, and that's how it is, and that's how it must continue to be. Americans from across the political spectrum, Democrats and Republicans, liberals, conservatives, independents, must continue to stand united in their support of Israel. It's in America's interest to stand with Israel. And our ardent support for Israel does not mean we lose sight of the goal, supported by Israeli prime ministers and presidents of both parties of two states, living side by side in peace and security. I have no illusions about the prospects of peace at this moment in our history. I've spoken on this stage many times. Every year I'm proud to speak. And I've spoken about the history of intransigence, by Palestinian leaders and too many in the Arab world to recognize Israel, the only Jewish state. Sadly, while some progress has been made, those days are not yet behind us. But the possibility for a two-state solution must still be maintained. A two-state solution that ensures a safe, secure, and democratic Israel that can live side by side with a demilitarized Palestinian state that provides dignity and self-determination for the Palestinian people. The only way, I know that's your position, and that is mine as well. The only way a solution can be achieved is through direct negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, not by international pressure campaigns, not by the BDS movement, not by solutions imposed by foreign capitals. Unilateral action taken by either side could diminish the prospects of future peace. Unilateral action might even foreclose the pathways to peace. That has always been AIPAC's position, as it should be. Real diplomacy through direct negotiations, while a long and arduous road, is the only path for a durable peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. We must not shut the door on the peace all of us in this room want to see. We must keep that prospect alive. The administration should resume funding to organizations that bring Israelis and Palestinians together. I join AIPAC, and I'm so proud that AIPAC has supported bipartisan legislation by Senators Coons and Kaine, Democrats, Graham and Gardner, Republicans, known as the Partnership for Peace, which supports joint economic ventures between Israelis, Palestinians, and Americans, as well as programs that bring the next generation of Israeli and Palestinian leaders together. I'm proud that AIPAC supports these efforts. The extremists on both sides who pretend that the other side doesn't exist or is just going to disappear are living in a state of denial. Together we must strive for a secure peace. L'chaim. Now, just as we must continue to support our friend and ally Israel, so too are we called on to confront a greater and more ancient threat to the Jewish people: anti-Semitism, the poison that chased countless Jewish people from Europe, including my family, and killed so many who remain, including many of my relatives. The same poison that scattered the Jewish people to the winds and made us foreigners in our own countries, that poison, that same poison, unfortunately, tragically, is beginning to fester here in America. Over the holidays, usually a time of peace and rest with family and friends, there were several vicious attacks on Jewish communities in America. A kosher deli in Jersey City was the target of a mass shooting that wounded 7 and claimed the lives of 3 Jews, including a prominent rabbi in the home borough of Brooklyn. I just saw his father yesterday when I visited the Satmar community. Not 2 years later, on the 7th night, not 2 weeks later, on the 7th night of Hanukkah, a man attacked a gathering of Orthodox Jews in Monsey, New York, with a machete. And these are only the latest example of the rising tide of open and anti-Semitic violence that has visited synagogues from Pittsburgh to Poway, California. Anti-Semitic violence on our streets and in our schools. Anti-Semitic violence at the home of a rabbi on a quiet Hanukkah night. My friends, the rise of anti-Semitism in the United States is a national crisis that all Americans must fight. I do not use those words lightly. The history of anti-Semitism in the world has taught us to appreciate what America has meant to the Jewish people, and how much better things are here than elsewhere in the world. But the people of our faith have learned the hard lessons about how anti-Semitism and violence against Jews walk hand in hand. We have learned hard lessons about how anti-Semitism thrives in societies where bigotry goes unchecked, where the idea of truth is questioned, and where propaganda and conspiracy theories flourish. We have learned the hard lessons about how, when people of goodwill and good faith are silent or dismissive, anti-Semitism grows and gathers force. In Germany, in the 20s and 30s, when the Nazis began their long campaign of violence and dehumanization against the Jews of Germany, too many in Europe, and too many of them Jews, here in America, were silent. Too many called them isolated incidents and did not speak out forcefully. And we all know what happened. There are so many differences between our age in the 20s and the 30s, thank God. But we have learned that anti-Semitism, unchallenged, unbridled, will grow and gather strength. We cannot and must not allow anti-Semitism to gather any more strength. And we must do all we can to protect our vulnerable institutions. So on this stage, surrounded by friends of Israel and the Jewish people, I call on Congress to quadruple funding to protect at-risk synagogues, at-risk shuls, at-risk yeshivas, and other houses of worship where our families gather to provide the hardened security we need so this will not happen again. I need your support to tell members of Congress how important this is. My friend, who you heard from a little while ago, Chairwoman Lowy, has been a strong supporter of this program. I want to thank her again tonight. In a time of moral emergency in the 20s and 30s, too few spoke up and did what was necessary to face down anti-Semitism. We, our generation, will not make the same mistake. We will educate the next generation about what can happen when we forget the past. A genocide not properly remembered can lead to another. And that's why I'm proud to support the Never Again Education Act, led by Senators Rosen and Langford in the Senate, which expands and authorizes new resources for Holocaust education in our schools. I will use my power as minority leader to pass this bill through Congress and show the world that America will never forget the painful lessons of the Shoah. We all know this will be a difficult year. The fires of partisanship already burn brightly. A national election will douse fuel on those flames. But we must never, never, never let that partisanship poison the bipartisan support that Israel has always enjoyed. We must never, never, never let support for Israel be sharpened into just another partisan shiv, another tool in the arsenal of political peddlers and party strategists. That is the path, surely, to ruin. The state of Israel has been able to count on the support of the United States from the days it drew its very first breath, when President Harry Truman became the first to recognize Eretz Yisrael as a member of the family of nations. It was another president, President Kennedy, who said that, quote, "Friendship for Israel is not a partisan matter, it is a national commitment." These words, that national commitment, has inspired me my whole life. From the time I listened to my transistor radio, to the newscasts of the 6 Days War, praying to Hashem that Israel would survive, to the time I listened to my predecessor in the Senate, Senator Moynihan, go before the United Nations as our ambassador to defend Zionism and condemn the hypocrisy of the United Nations. Up until this very moment, I have never once doubted the commitment of our nation to support Israel, and I intend to continue the great work those in the past have done to keep it that way. Now we're going to have hard work to do. But Israel, the small sliver of land that has represented the hopes, the dreams, the aspirations of the Jewish people for over 2 millennia, is worth the effort. And I swear to you that as long as I am the Democratic leader, as long as Hashem breathes air into my lungs, I will do everything in my power to maintain the unshakable, unbreakable friendship between Israel and the United States. Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish people live. Long may they live here and in Eretz Yisrael. Thank you, AIPAC.